Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Ashtotter the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajaka Ashtotter the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Darshan isn't until
8:15. 8:15. We'll open the curtains at 8:15. Antonella, Hare Krishna, welcome. You may wonder about all of the. I had a fall, and I fell down, and I broke a tooth, and I had a little laceration which had some stitches, and but it's going to be okay. They're going to rebuild my tooth. But padam padam yad vipadam natesham. There's a verse like that. It goes samashrita. You're welcome if you like to sit at class. We have Gitas for you and everything. Samashrita ye padapallava plavam mahatpadam punyesho marare. Bhavam buddhi vatsapadam param padam 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 yadvipadam natesham. For one who takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna completely, samashrita ye padapallava, which are mahatpadam, which means they're the place where the whole Mahatattva rests, the whole creation rests on him, and where all the Mahatmas stay. All the Mahatmas stay at his lotus feet. Mahatpadam punya yasha means that just by glorifying him, you get pious credits. You become purified. Murari. Murari is the name for Krishna, meaning the enemy of the Mura demon. So what else happens? What happens is that Paro Murari, Mahatpadam Punyayosh Murari, Bhavambudir Vatsapadam Parampadam. Bhavambudir means the ocean of birth and death. Vatsapadam shrinks down to the water that could be contained not in a cow's footprint, but in a calf's footprint, real small. You see? So then you can just walk over it. You don't even need the boat. Punyasho Vatsapadam Parampadam, because they're already residents. If you feel full shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, you're already residents of the supreme abode. And not for them is this place, which is Padam Padam Yadvipadam Natesham, a place where there is danger at every step, which I realized it myself personally by slipping and falling on my face. So now I know better. Okay, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 18th day of March 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in the 6th chapter called Dhyāna-yoga, the yoga of meditation. Text 6 on page 262, if you'd like to look. 262. And we'll go word by words and then we'll chant responsively. Bandhur Atmatmanas Tasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanas Tushatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatravat Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat. Go ahead, David. Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat. Okay. You want to try? No? I'm done. Antonella? Bandhuratmatmanastasya Yenatmaivatmana Jitaha Anatmanastu shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat. Anyone online? Okay. Bandhu, friend, Atma, the mind, Atmanaha, of the living entity, Tasya, of him, Yena, by whom, Atma, the mind, Eva, certainly, Atmana, by the living entity, Jitaha, conquered. Anatmanaha, of one who has failed to conquer the mind, 2. But Shatrutve, because of enmity, Varteta remains Atma Eva, the very mind, Shatruvat, as an enemy. Translation. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. And I think we'll do best to just read the previous translation. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. And then this verse explains how it can be an enemy, how it can be a friend. Purport. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend in discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the cyclic succession. So these two verses, 5 and 6, are very significant. In 5, Krishna is explaining that one should elevate himself. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind, not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. And then in the purport, Prabhupada quotes this very important verse near the bottom of page 261. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo bandhaya vishayasango muktya nirvishayam manaha. For man, mind is the cause of bondage, and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. So, the whole key is the mind in yoga practice, and that actually also includes bhakti yoga. Because bhakti yoga is what the practices that we perform are meant to help us fix the mind on Krishna, and to experience the all-attractive nature of Krishna, and so that the natural sense of wanting to serve Krishna comes out. So, but the mind is the rebel. We're living with the enemy, you know. So it has to be trained, and what we have, the advantage over the lower animals, the lower species, is the intelligence. If you recall back in chapter 3. The same the question came out, what is the real enemy of the soul? Kama. Arjuna asked the question, Atta kena prayuktoyam papam charati purusha, anichanna vivarshana, baladivini. He says, what is it that impels us to do things that we know are against our best interest? We know are wrong, but still we're impelled to do it. So that means the intelligence is saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? But the mind is saying, no, I've got to have this thing, or he's my enemy. Now's your chance to, strangle him, or whatever, So, the key in any yoga is to strengthen the intelligence so that we can control the lower self, beginning with the mind. And that's why at the end of that 3rd chapter, Krishna says, Evam buddhe param buddha samstapyapanamaatmana jahi shaktam mahabhav kamarupam darasanam. Therefore, with your intelligence, with your purified intelligence, understand that you, the soul, are transcendental to the intelligence, and thus learn to control the lower self by the higher self. So purifying the intelligence and strengthening the intelligence in Krishna consciousness is so important. And that's exactly what we're doing here. By studying the Bhagavad Gita and other Shastras, but beginning with Bhagavad Gita, we're filling the mind with the words of Krishna and the words of his pure devotee, and becoming enlightened and strengthened. I don't know if anyone was here when I gave the last class on Wednesday, but I think I quoted this verse. It may have been in the morning class, but it's very appropriate. This is a verse spoken by Lord Chaitanya and his instructions of Sanatana Goswami. Now, just as a matter of information, the instructions and indeed the entire Vedic literature can be divided into these three sections. It's called Sambandha, Abhideya, and Priyojana. And I'll explain what they are. Sambandha is understanding who we are, what the body is, what this world is, what God is, and what the relationships are between all those. That's the first thing. And that's why Krishna begins in chapter 2 explaining the soul, explaining the difference between the soul and the body and the process of transmigration. This is the A of the ABC. So that Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Sanatana Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're also divided into those three. And after describing, so the first question of Sanatana Goswami, this is a famous encounter. Sanatana Goswami was a devotee as long as his brother, but they had been kind of blackmailed into working in the government of the Muslim government there. One became the prime minister, and the other became the finance minister, right and left hand. Because the Nawab had threatened to persecute the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas unless they joined the government. So they decided to do that. And as soon as they did that, their position within the Brahminical Vaishnav community became compromised because they were working with the Muslims, you know. So that went on for a few years. And I learned recently, because you always get this feeling that they were senior, you know, finance minister and prime minister, you know, senior to Lord Chaitanya, but they're actually both younger than Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at 24, he started traveling soon after that, and he came to Ramkeli, which is, I think, a town in Bengal, where they were. He knew they were there. And then they offered their obeisance as soon as they saw him, because they recognized that he was Namo Mahabodhanyaya. You've heard this verse before. This is a very important verse. It's Rupa Goswami and Sanatana recognize, we offer obeisance to Mahabodhanyaya, the most munificent avatar. Munificent means most generous, you know. Now, Prabhupada would often use the word magnanimous. He really liked that word magnanimous, you know. But magnanimous has a little different connotation. You can think of it this way. Magnanimous is very, very, famous for forgiving, you know, forgiving and being solicitous of others like that. But munificent is specifically famous for giving, for charity. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, he was famous for both. He forgave Jagai and Marai, so he's also magnanimous. You know. So anyway, you are the most munificent. We offer obeisance to the most magnificent avatar of Krishna, Namo Mahabodhanyaya. Krishna Prema Padayate. What is he giving that no other avatar gave? Freely? Krishna Prema. Krishna, love for God is the most valuable thing inside the universe or outside the universe. More valuable than any material wealth. It's Krishna Prema Pradayate. You're giving Krishna Prema. Krishnaya, you yourself are Krishna. Unto Krishna. You're in the mood of his great devotee, Radharani. Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya Namne. You are Krishna, but you've taken the name Krishna Chaitanya. Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya. When I break these up, I forget. Namo Mahabodhanyaya, Krishna Bevadaya, Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya. I can't believe it. Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya. Namo Namaha. On the altar? Go on, Namne Goda Chaitanya. Okay, thank you. Krishnaya, Krishna Chaitanya Namne. You're named Krishna Chaitanya, Goda Tujay. And you don't have the blackish color of Krishna, but you have the golden color of Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya, in his beginning of the section on Abhideya, Abhideya means to practice. Sambandha means understanding who we are, what the world is, what the God is, what the relationship is. That's the essential first step of Sambandha Gyan. Ultimately culminates in understanding what your original Swarup is and your service to Krishna. So he says, when he begins the Abhideya practice, that means, and what do we practice in order to realize this, and then to get to prayojana. Prayojana is the ultimate goal, love of God. So you understand relation, and you think about it. It pertains to anything you want to do. Suppose you want to become a car mechanic. Okay, so your goal is to be able to work on cars. You like cars, and you make a living. And that's your goal, but you don't know anything. So you have to go and learn from someone, become an assistant to a car mechanic, say, right, and then watch as he's doing everything in the cars. So you have to end the relationship between all the things. It's sambandha. And your practice is, okay, you can, work with the carburetors. Do they have carburetors or anything? Not so much. That's my old day. But anyway, you can practice being overseen by the guru, the main car mechanic, and gradually become proficient, and then you get the prayojana, you get your own gig as a car mechanic. So it's training, and then practice, understanding, and then the final goal. So in the section about Abhideya, Lord Chaitanya begins with this verse right near the beginning. Kamadinang katina katita palita dhuni deshas tesham jata mayana karuna nattapano prashantihi. Utsvijayatan hadiyotapate sampratam labdha buddhis famayatak shadanamabhahyam mamdayung svartadasya. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They show me no mercy, yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires because my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. Now I could give the rest of the class on that verse, which I won't do, but I'll give you the translation or the explanation. So the idea is that life after life, we're being carried by our subtle body, the mind, which is full of all of these desires for enjoyment and also fears and anxieties and all a million different things, from one body to another, you see? And we're controlled by that mind full of these desires. And then the karma is also involved, and human. So it's like long ago, I don't know if you remember some of these movies about Egypt and the slaves getting out. You're in the slave ship, and you got the guys with the whips, and then you got the slaves, chained to the thing and pulling the ropes. You're like that, you can't. So, they've not shown me any mercy, and they not let me go. So, but now I'm rejecting these desires. I have the strength to say no to the senses, which are expelled by the mind. Why? Because my intelligence has awoken, has strengthened. My intelligence has awoken, and now I'm rejecting these hellish desires. My higher intelligence now. But you can't do nothing. Then the senses are there. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness. This is how you can become fearless, because you're not on the bodily platform. If the body goes, hey, I'm in my spiritual body. You really know that for a fact. So, shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. We have to serve. This is the nature of the spirit soul. Either we're going to serve our lusty desires, our impulses, our boss, a million different things, or we're going to serve Krishna. And serving these other, the body, serving these other, just leads to birth after birth after birth. And oftentimes, with no culture, no Vedic culture, you're going to be committing all kinds of sin, lose the human form of life. So this is a great chance. We're all human beings here. And we can use it to cultivate the knowledge of Krishna, strengthen our intelligence so that we can direct the senses away from the sense objects and toward Krishna, and gradually become more and more purified. And then the mind can become our friend. Just like the gopis, of course they were at such a high level, but they, at some point, they feel the pain of separation from Krishna. And they say, oh, wretched mind, you won't let us forget Krishna. They can't help but forget Krishna and remember Krishna because of the love. So we want the mind to spontaneously remember Krishna. And when we see something outside, we see, oh, this is related to Krishna because it's part of his energy. You see? In other words, everything, for the pure devotees, everything reminds them of Krishna. And of course, if they're in a temple, it's obvious. But the temple is for us. In this environment, everywhere you look, there's reminders of Krishna. Whatever you hear reminds you of Krishna. You see the deities. Even when you eat prasad, oh, it was offered to Krishna. So the idea is that we arrange our life in such a way that we can't but remember Krishna. So that's the difference between the For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. One who has failed to do the mind will remain the greatest enemy. So that's whether it's the Ashtanga. Ashtanga means 8 limbs. This is the meditative yoga, which he's going to talk about here and give instruction. Or Bhakti yoga. The mind is the key element. And that's why, the chanting of the holy name is so important. Because you're training the mind, come back again to the sound of the holy name. And it isn't long before you find a certain pleasure there, because the name is all attractive. It's not different from Krishna. So you find it's not like an unimaginable austerity, to chant 16 rounds or to be in a long kirtan. There's a pleasure there, even for beginners. You can get to the point where and then this is Lord Chaitanya's genius. Enhance it with beautiful music. You see, the essence is the sound of the holy name, which of course we're getting, without any accoutrements, the chanting japa. But the real yoga dharma is the chanting, dancing, and singing, because it engages all the senses. And there's something called Tauya Trikena, which I discovered by studying some of these Sanskrit verses. Tauya Trikena means the 3 functions of singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. Now you can see that can be a big force for Maya. Actually, they've opened up an open. I know it's when the warm weather is coming and they change the clocks. Halfway down the alley, they have these alleys. From my apartment building, there's an open air place that they set up where they have rock concerts in the summer. And so, I'm trying to sleep and you're going to put the earplugs in. But it's enthralling for those who get into that. Right? The dancing is there, maybe the lower modes of nature, but it's very attractive, That's Tauya Trikena that can degrading you. But Lord Chaitanya took that Tauya Trikena, dancing and singing, playing musical instruments, and use it in the glorification of Krishna, showed how it can be used. And it's very powerful. And you see, some of these, of course, some of the, I don't know if you've ever been to a Rath Yatra, but you know what a Rath Yatra is? Just hang on. At the beginning of August every year now. During the pandemic, it stopped. But in LA, there's a big Rath Yatra. Rath Yatra means I don't know if you know this, but I thought of this moniker, the Festival of the Chariots. Have you ever heard of that? Of course. Yeah, I created that in 1975. Yeah. But I mean, it's obvious. There's 3 chariots, and there's a festival, and that's what Rath Yatra means. It means a chariot festival. So hundreds of, I think maybe thousands of devotees will come from different parts of the country or even abroad, to come this famous Rath Yatra. I was there for the first one in 1977. In Los Angeles? Yes, we had an elephant. I swear to God, we had the first couple of ones. We had an elephant. The devotee was riding on the elephant. Alice Coltrane was there. You heard of Alice Coltrane? And it was incredible. Prabhupada wasn't able to be there. He was 77, but he saw pictures of it.
Was Jayananda still there?
No. Jayananda had passed away weeks earlier. How that Rath Yatra came about was amazing, because Ramaswamy was in charge of LA, and the Rath Yatra was always in San Francisco. Everyone went up to San Francisco. That was a given. That was the first one was in '67. Prabhupada couldn't attend, but he was right near there. And then the Rath Yatra would occur every year after that in San Francisco. That was where it happened. But it was clear that, Rath Yatra, why does it have to be only in San Francisco? So Ramaswamy was reluctant to do that because of a big expense. But Narayan came, and he was one of the architects of the early Rath Yatras. And he said, well, it doesn't have to be like that. You can have a nice festival at the end, where you set up booths and you have prasadam, and you can get your money back, or more. So he showed how it could be, you wouldn't have to lose so much money. And I remember, we were painting the signs in the warehouse and everything, preparing for it and like that. And so it's a wonderful thing. You're dancing and you're taking the Lord out. We had him here for many years till the pandemic came and they shut down the festival in the park. A smaller one, obviously. But it just draws you in. You know, if a procession lasts maybe an hour down on the beach. You know, we go down on the beach, and then at the end we serve out prasadam, and there's so many devotees you haven't seen in many years, and you reconnect. You know, it's just a wonderful day, and it's all based on the chanting. You know, the stage is set up, and there's chanting going on, and all kinds of stuff, plays and everything. It's a wonderful festival. And Lord Chaitanya would attend every year in Jagannath Puri. So I'm getting a little far afield, but everything we do is meant to help us to remember Krishna, to place our mind on Krishna. And it's really training, because just like, you know, I had my little accident. I told you I fell down. So the real world really is like that. We don't know when the end point is coming. And we're not going to die. Nobody dies, you know, but we're going to leave this body. And if you're thinking of Krishna when you leave the body, then you don't come back. Krishna says that in several places, half a dozen times. That's the whole point. The goal is etavan sankhya yoga abhyam swadharma parinishtaya janmalabhak purapangsam ante narayana smriti. The phrase ante narayana smriti simply means at the end, at death, to remember Narayan, which is another name for Krishna. Whether you're doing Sankhya Yoga or you're in Varnashram, whatever you do during your life, the perfection will be if you can remember Krishna at the end of your life. That's the whole idea. And so that means perfecting that. So you're remembering him all the time before then. Then whenever it happens, you know. And because you're in a society of devotees, then they help you to remember. I've been at the bedside of at least a half dozen devotees who have left. They asked me to sing, you know, Hare Krishna. Radhanath Prabhu, you know, I don't think anyone here remembers him. He was an amazing devotee. He was a book distributor, but he had some disease and gradually became more and more crippled. He was in a wheelchair. He had an aid, you know, wheel him out. And even though he's out, you know, practically could hardly move, but he could speak. And he said, take this book, and he was distributing. And then when finally he had some, you know, health crisis, he was in the hospital, he was on a breathing machine. I went to see him every day, and Rajendra Nandana, he was also coming and seeing him and spending hours with him, actually, which I couldn't do. And then the doctor said, well, you know, you can survive this, but now you have to be on a breathing machine all the time. You know, before he had enough independence and he could go out, he had an aide, you know. So he said, no, forget that, you know. And so he knew when he was going to leave. So he called me, or his aide called me and said, okay, when can you come? He said, well, I'm leaving for Alachua on Friday, so we'll do it on Thursday. So I said, okay, we'll do it on Thursday. So he, you know, we all gathered in the hospital room, everyone was chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, and then he pulled the plug. And, you know, after a few minutes he was gone, hearing Hare Krishna. Another one was Ojasvi, whom probably none of you remember. He was a wonderful devotee and came down with cancer. And we were all there. He had some children who were scattered around the country. They flew in. It was a whole group, you know, chanting. So that's, you know, practically that's one of the great advantages of being in a society like this, where people can help you remember Krishna, you know. So this is how we make the mind our friend. We have to conquer the mind. The mind is so powerful. I like to, you know, I made a stupid joke long ago, but I keep repeating it so you can. The mind has a mind of its own. It's a fact, you know. The mind can, you know, you just like, you know, one of the most sad things is the idea of PTSD. You know, a lot of the military guys, they go through, and sometimes it's moral crisis. They were forced to do something that they regret, and you can't forget it. You go through some trauma in your childhood, and it's just with you, you know. It's like brain damage, they said, you know. So that's the mind. It's become damaged, you know, because it's hooked up to the brain, and it's a whole thing. So Krishna consciousness is systematic training of the mind by strengthening the intelligence to direct the mind, do this, go there, think of this, hear this, to think of Krishna more and more, and to serve Krishna, because we're by nature servants. If we're not going to serve Krishna, we're going to serve the mind, we're going to serve the senses, we're going to serve a million different things. But when we learn to serve Krishna, we find that there's a great pleasure in that. It's the greatest pleasure to be serving Krishna. Whereas these other, the senses, there's some pleasure there, but then it's over. And this brings to mind you will, forgive the pun. One of my favorite verses, which is in the last chapter. It seems to always come up. Yehi sang, text 22, 522. What do we see there? Yeah. Yehi sang sparjaja boga, dukkha, page 249. Yehi sang sparjaja boga, dukkha yonaya evate. Adyantabantan konteya nateshu ramate buddha. The last word means the intelligent. Now this translation has been edited. An intelligent person does not take part in the pleasures which are due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the source of all misery, the sources of all misery, and they have a beginning and end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So that's the key. So then where do we delight? Previous verse. Bayas parse sataktatma vindityatmani yat sukham sab brahma yoga yutakma sukham akshayam ashrute. A liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness because he concentrates on the Supreme, and that Supreme is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Brahma is here. See that second line? Sab Brahma Yoga. That's Brahman, on Brahman, and the Supreme Brahman is Krishna. We are also Brahman, aham brahmasmi, but we're not the Supreme Brahman. So that's where we can get our pleasure. And notice, sukham akshayam ashnute, enjoying unbreakable happiness. Sense pleasure is always temporary. We have experience of that. And it leaves you wanting more. And so that plants this desire. Before long, that becomes an obsession, you know. But the idea is to become obsessed with Krishna, somehow or other. You know, and we have such a wealth of ways to become absorbed in Krishna. And the sound vibration of Bhagavatam is filled with so many beautiful poetic verses. I put a few of them into English. But like the songs of the gopis, you know, in separation from Krishna, this is a highlight of the Bhagavatam. And one of my favorites said is chapter 35, 10th canto. They're at home doing their chores, but they're thinking of Krishna and they're singing to each other. So one says to another, Anucharai samanavarna taviya adipurusha hivacha labuti vanacharo gititatesha tadandi venanava yatigasi yadahi vanalatasta laba atmani vishnam yandi yandi hiva pushpa paladya pranatabhada tatapamanudara prema rishtadhanavova vashusma. So they're visualizing Krishna in the forest with his friends and the cows, and they're at home, you know, but they're singing to each other and absorbed in Krishna. So what does that mean? Anusharai means those who, his playmates, his friends. Somanavarna tavirya, they're praising him so nicely. They're praising his glory, you know, they're singing about him just as we are. Adi Purusha Hivacha Labhuti. It seems as if he is the original person, surrounded by all his energies, they don't know that he's God, that he's Krishna. Says as if Adi Purusha Ivacha Labhuti. Vanacharo, they're going through the forest here and there. Girita Teshu, or the side of the mountain, Govardhan. Charanti Venana, they're herding the cow. Charanti Venanavayati Gasa Yadahi. And Krishna plays his flute to call the cows. He can sing their names. The cows all have names, and they have groups. And so he'll sing the name of the leader of the group, and then the cows will come. So he's playing his flute to call the cows. And what happens is all the trees and creepers, who you have to remember in Goloka Vrindavan, everything is fully conscious. So these trees are also fully conscious, and they're so ecstatic that Krishna's coming through there that they immediately blossom with flowers and fruits, the vines and the trees. And because of the extra weight, the vines and the branches go down. They're like bowing down to Krishna as he passes through. They're visualizing all this. So this is just one pair. It's called Yugal Gita. They come in pairs, you know. And it's just, you know, the meter and the language and the poetry is so attractive. You can really become enthralled in that. So this is what the main way in which we become absorbed in Krishna. Chanting the holy name is undoubtedly the most important. But there's all of these other vibrations and descriptions and festivals and ways in which we can purify our soul by glorifying Krishna. And the mind becomes the friend, because just like, you know, I'm getting a little older, so you may notice I forget a verse here and there, you know. But the verses, you memorize them and they become part of you. It's just, when I was memorizing a lot of verses, and I should go over them again, it's like picking up a jewel and putting it in your pocket. You can call upon it any time, you know? Just like the prayers of Queen Kunti, you know? And they're so easy. One of the first verses I ever memorized, Prabhupada was, I'm not touting my own horn, but it's almost 51 years to the day that I joined the temple, March 27th. It would be in 1973 is when I joined Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada came 2 weeks later, which is like, you know, some devotees never saw Prabhupada sitting in Brazil somewhere, you know, or he comes one. But he would come to New York quite often, so he came there. And he's speaking on Kunti's prayers. And what is the prayer he's speaking on? Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. It's just a simple offer of obeisances unto Krishna. This is the vocative form. Unto you, Krishna. Just like we see in the Ma'om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya. We say, unto you, Srila Prabhupada, we're offering obeisances. That's the vocative form. So this is Krishnaya. Kunti is right there. And she, unto you, Krishna, Krishnaya, who are Vasudevaya, the son of Vasudeva. Devaki Nandanaya Cha, the beloved son of Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. Devaki Nandanaya, Nanda Gopa Kumaraya, the beloved young boy of Nanda Gopa. You see? Nanda Gopa Kumaraya. Govindaya, you are the pleaser of the cows and the senses. Govindaya, Namo Namaha. I offer obeisances again and again. So that verse was just so attractive and so simple. And, you know, so one of the first verses I memorized. And I was chanting it everywhere, you know. Chant Hare Krishna. There's a million different... Anyway, that's how bhakti yogis control the mind, the hearing and chanting, and that's the main thing. And then the mind becomes your friend, and at any time, you know, oh, that reminds me of a verse. Prabhu, would you like to hear a verse? You know, like that. Okay. Any questions on that particular verse? Text 6. I know we went a little far afield, but... All right. Chitatmana prashantasya Paramatma samahitaha Shitosna sukadukeshu Tatamana pamanayoho. For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Purport. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Excuse me. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation. When one's mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramatma, or Supersoul, because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness. The devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, namely distress and happiness, cold and heat, etc. This state is practical samadhi, or absorption in the Supreme. So this reminds me, you know, this is a because one of the important prerequisite to all of this is that we have the proper pramana. Pramana means something you trust as evidence for what is true and what is not true. And you take the instruction and you follow it. This comes up at the end of chapter 16. Chapter 16 is all about the divine and demonic nature, you see. And at the beginning, Krishna gives a bunch of qualities of the divine nature, and then he has a whole description of demonic nature. And it's pretty heavy, because then he gets to the end of this chapter, and beginning with text, 21. Yeah, 21. He's winding up, and he's describing the 3 gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. And they all reside in the mind. It's still the same old mind. Trivadam narakastedam dvaram nashanam atmanaha kama kroras tata lobas tasmaritatrayang jajed. There are three gates leading to this hell that he just described in the previous verses. Lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man or woman should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. And then he describes the benefit of that. Etabamukta kontaya. The man, human being, who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. So it all depends on controlling lust, anger, and greed. And then he gives this very memorable verse. Yakshastra vidamutsuja. He brings up the Shastra now. And this is the whole idea of pramana, which will come at the very end. The chapter ends at text 24. Yakshastra vidamutsuja vartate kamakarataha nasa siddham avapnoti nasukam naparam gatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. So what's so key about the Shastra? This is Krishna coming outside so we can hear him. We can perceive this. He's inside trying to preach to it, but we don't want to hear as the super soul. We block it out. So he comes externally as the scripture and as the acharya, as the realized soul, Srila Prabhupada. So here we have Krishna's own words being explained by this pure devotee. So this is our real pramana. So the Shastra Vidi, but if you give up, you neglect or you don't know the instructions of Shastra, and then you have to act, you act on the basis of kama or lust, then you can't get perfection, you can't get happiness, and you cannot go to the supreme goal. So the last verse talks about this word pramana. Tasmat chastram pramanam te karya karya babastito gyatpa shastra vadanoktam karma kartam iharhasi. One should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So duty means something that is something you may not spontaneously want to do, but you do it because you know if you do it, it's the right thing to do and you'll progress toward the ultimate goal. This is the idea, how the intelligence say, no, forget it, mine. I'm not going to follow that impulse. You know, I did that so many births. I now am going to follow the instruction of the Shastra. And therefore this pramana. Pramana is something that you trust to give the proper information, and you follow it. Now this is the problem today, is that people don't have, they have all kinds of stuff coming in that they're forced to believe because they're attracted for one reason or another. But it's not ultimate instruction. It's somebody trying to do a number on them, and to exploit their vote or exploit their money or somehow or other, gain power. It's demonic. And that's the whole idea behind spreading this knowledge through the books and other media. Because this is the only countervailing influence, this pure instruction. This is being spoken by Krishna for the benefit of all of us. It is being commentated by Prabhupada for the benefit of us, not to make money. Prabhupada, he came to America with $7, and it wasn't a money-making proposition. He wanted to gather souls. He wanted to help us. Completely selfless. He had no material motive at all. And that's Krishna also. He has no material motive in coming here. He's coming here because Dharma has become distorted. Yadahidai Dharma Saglana. When there's discrepancies in Dharma, I come to reinstate Dharma, to protect the devotees, to reinstate real Dharma, and to eradicate the miscreants. Why does he take so much trouble? He's having a good time in Goloka Vrindavan. Why come down here? Because we're all his children. Because we have that bond. He knows the bond. We've forgotten him, but he hasn't forgotten. So we should realize that this is such a beneficial thing, and it's basically free. The cost of the book is minimal. The classes are free. The mantra is free. Even the prasadam is free, at least at 8:15, 8:30. The point is that it's just engaged. The whole thing is engaged on as an act of service to Krishna and service to humanity. And there's that famous phrase: "Sarve sukhino bhavantu." Let all living beings be happy. But how can they be happy? They can't be happy by serving their lust, anger, and greed. They can be happy by serving Krishna. Got to serve, but we should serve in such a way we'll be elevated. So it all depends on the mind. And we're kind of getting to the end of the class. Any comments on this verse? one who has conquered the mind, the best friend. Okay. Did we do 7? I think we did 7. 8. Jnana vijnana triptatma. Kutasto vijitendriyaha. Yukta ityuchate yogi. Samalostrashmakanchanaha. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Purport. Book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. This is stated as follows. Atakshi Krishna namadi nabave grayam indriyai sevan mukhehi jivado swayameva spuratyadaha. No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually saturated by transcendental service to the Lord and the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes revealed to him. Well, we need to look at this trance. The point is, beginning with the tongue, when we become spiritually satisfied by service to the Lord, beginning with the tongue, are the transcendental name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. The Bhagavad Gita is the science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. A Krishna conscious person has realized knowledge by the grace of Krishna because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect. By transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions, but by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. It is the realized soul who is actually self-controlled because he is surrendered to Krishna. He is transcendental because he has nothing to do with mundane scholarship. For him, mundane scholarship and mental speculation, which may be as good as gold to others, are of no greater value than pebbles or stones. So, fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. So that acquired knowledge and realization means Krishna consciousness. To be fully satisfied, thinking of Krishna, serving Krishna, glorifying Krishna, cooking for Krishna, and doing everything else for Krishna. And just there's such a tremendous storehouse of knowledge and transcendental pleasure in our own hearts, because Krishna's there. But we can't realize him now. We look outside, we're trying to exploit this material energy. But it's led us astray, life after life. So if we realize that and we believe it, then we can become determined in Krishna consciousness. And all facility is there. We have the books, we have the temple, we have the prasadam, we have the festivals. And that's what this little outpost is all about. So I'm going to end with one little poem for you. This is there's some I wrote that are completely original, that they're not based on a verse. But they're based on a painting. And unfortunately, I'm going to bring my iPad next time and I'll show you the paintings. So this is a painting of Krishna entering the forest of Vrindavan in the morning. He goes out with his friends and the cows and all the gopis are watching him leave, and it's a whole thing. It happens every morning. And there's a verse, this one does have a verse, Barhapidam Natavadavapuga. With lovely peacock plume upon his head and fragrant flower placed upon each ear, he enters Braja's woods with graceful tread, a handsome dancing actor without peer. His golden yellow raiment brightly glows, his splendid garland reaches to his knees, and from his luscious lips the nectar flows, and filled his flute with charming melodies. As Krishna thus begins his blissful day with cowherd friends who sing his glory sweet, he beautifies Vrindavan's forest way with fine impressions of his lotus feet. So then, the next picture is they're running, they're free of the village now, and Balaram and Krishna are running ahead of the friends along the river Yamuna. And the cows are behind them and the other boys are running, getting into the forest. Let's go, said Krishna, don't delay at all. And he and Balaram began to run ahead of all their cowherd friends who called, Oh Krishna, Rama, let us join the fun. And off they ran to Braja's forest haunts, to play in every bower, grove, and sward. A sward is a meadow, not a sword. Sword. The S-W-A-R-D. Play in every barrow and sword. The boys would tease their friend with playful taunts, forgetting his position as the Lord. Shri Krishna is inviting us as well to join him in his pastimes, which enthrall. The wise heed Krishna when they hear him tell, "Let's go, my friends, do not delay at all." Okay, there's a third one, but we don't have time to finish it, to describe that. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maybe at the end of the article I'll give you the last one. Krishna is swinging from a bough. Have you ever seen that painting? Anyway, I'm going to bring my iPad and show you the pictures next time. All right, so we'll resume with text 9 tomorrow. God willing, as they say, the Muslims. Krishna willing. Hare Krishna.